KoitCast.
Hi, Michael. Welcome to KoitCast.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be with you.
Thank you ever so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. To start about you, can you give us a grounding of who you are? So who are you, where are you from, etc.?
Yes, my name is Michael Schratt. I'm a military aerospace historian. Primary focus of my research deals with classified aircraft within the military industrial complex, also historical legacy UFO cases, and then most recently, my crusade is to highlight the work of Leonard Stringfield, who's the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrieval. So over the last 5 years, I've been going through his documents, his binders, dictation notes, status reports, digging out the mission critical cases, committing those to a very good refined drawing, and then following up with a full color rendering to make the cases come alive. So that's been my crusade.
Excellent. And we will discuss that a bit later on because
Yep.
I did enjoy your site, by the way, for a number of reasons, but I'll go through that later with you.
Yep.
I'm always curious as to know why people pick certain areas of interest or fields that they study. So why for you aviation history? What drew you to that?
It's been a passion of mine from day one. My dad used to take me to a place called Victory Air Museum, and this
Okay.
is not too far from Chicago. And you can imagine, this would have been 75 time frame, something like that. But they had these old warbirds parked out in a grassy field with tall grass growing up through the wheel wells and paint chips and cracked windshields and flat tires and skeleton control surfaces. It These birds were just like forgotten and lost way out in these fields, and it just had this ghostly appeal. That was the beginning of my love of aviation, which led to everything else.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? That something seemingly trivial to a load of people will be something
Yeah,
massive for somebody like yourself who
that's right.
saw something
That's
in
right.
them. And I do love
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. It also reminds me of American Pickers, by the way, if you've ever seen that program.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, with the
That's
grass
true.
going through stuff. Um, what was then your introduction to the paranormal world? And that could be anything. Obviously, you've gone into the UFO side of things, but has there been like a ghostly encounter or anything like that in your past?
Haven't had any ghost encounters, but always had an interest like in aviation, which led to the classified aircraft, that led to the UFO cases, which led to the Leonard Stringfield cases. So it's just been this tapestry going through all the different timelines.
Excellent stuff. And is your priority the UFO stuff, do you think, or is it still standard human aviation? What excites you the
Well,
most, do you think?
I like them. I like them both. Both are a
Okay.
passion for me. But when we really get down to it, it's going to be the legacy UFO crash retrieval cases that are going to move this field forward. Personally, I think that anything less than that, and we're just wasting our time. Anything less than full disclosure on the legacy UFO crash retrieval programs, including the defense contractors that have been involved in it, the intelligence community involved in it, the Atomic Energy Commission, which is really no longer in existence, the US Navy is involved in it, Lawrence Livermore Labs, Los Alamos, all these entities play a role here. Yep, they definitely play a role.
And we want to see all of that come to light properly.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
Yes,
hell
we
yeah,
do.
hell yeah. All right, so this would be an apt time then for us to jump directly into the UFO crashes and retrievals. So this one will be you will have answered this a shed load of times across your time doing this sort of
Mhm.
work, but crashes, it's the old classic. How can they travel here and then crash? So I want to address that, even though I know the answers
Okay.
personally. I'd rather you disseminate.
Sure. Okay. Well, looking at the best available evidence here, what we seem to be finding is that motherships are not crashing. What are crashing, in point of fact, are scout ships, much smaller craft, 18 to 28 feet in diameter. Those are what's actually crashing, and it's not the motherships. Now, the number two thing is some of these are forced landings, some of them are man-made craft. Some of them could be hand-me-downs that we were given. And then the other explanation is that there appears to be, and there's some good evidence to back this up, that there is a rogue group within the military industrial complex that is targeting, tracking, and shooting these things down for the propulsion system advancement and for the exploitation of weapons systems. That's why they're being shot down. Yep.
And let's investigate that one first, because that's the one
Right.
that actually has the most terrifying consequences,
Right.
or the other way. Because if we've got a program to do it, we obviously did it once maybe, and then realized,
Mhm.
well, there's no consequences, and carried on doing it to get technology. Do you see that, or do you see any measure of consequence throughout the
Well,
timeline?
the best way to answer that is looking at the Stringfield cases, and what I've come across is there are cases where we've got an egg-shaped craft 30 feet across that has a hull breach on the side of it with shrapnel coming out of it. So that could be an internal implosion. Maybe it was an external implosion, but that would have all the debris going on the inside. But
Mm.
there's more than one case where there's like a hole put right through the side of these things. So maybe we were shooting these down. Now, I don't think we can do it using artillery, but piggybacking on pre-existing radar systems, scalar weapons, directed energy weapons, that could be the way they're doing this.
Yeah, and that's the most fascinating, is the directed
Yeah.
energy weapons. Do we have any recorded, I don't know, audio of it or visual of that anywhere, do you think?
That's something I don't have. And if that would be some pretty bombshell video if
Hmm.
that came. But no, I don't have anything like that. No. Mm-mm.
But in the archives, we have this stories or theories of the egg with the hole in it, etc. And there's presumably others
Absolutely.
of the similar nature.
We've got, not only do we have the stories, but we've got the names of the metallurgical engineers who worked on the program, and they're the
Lovely.
ones who are telling this. Yep.
Yeah, I love this. The other things, obviously, is I would imagine there's some measure of natural phenomenon on Earth that also might interact, such as magnetic field or even weather
Sure.
phenomenon like a lightning strike or anything. Presumably, there's loads of cases of that, or is that the lesser?
That's one of the scenarios proposed by Don Schmidt, that it was struck by lightning and it exceeded the tensile strength of the materials of the craft itself. That's just one scenario. They appear to be fallible. They're not perfect, so we have to factor that in. So, you know, and basically we've got David Grush in congressional testimony stating that there is an ongoing UAP crash retrieval program. He's the one claiming it. So,
Mm.
I mean, that's it's really good information within congressional hearings.
And is the Roswell one the first one that we know of as a recorded crash retrieval?
Uh, that appears to be not correct because if David Grush is essentially correct, we've got the 33 one in Italy, we've got the 41 case in Cape Girardeau. So there's multiple cases before Roswell. I probably got 5 cases prior to Roswell in my collection.
Interesting, interesting. And what
Yep.
Roswell was apparently what 47, and
47.
so this 33 one then even precedes the atomic work, which is one of the theories that's put out there, wasn't it? Atomic blast that brought
Yes.
UFOs, etc., etc. So that's even more
Prior to,
interesting.
yeah.
So
You
which
know,
means they've been here a lot longer.
they've been here a lot longer. And see, that's where this gets difficult because you've got all these things converging at the same time. You've got potential extraterrestrial UFOs, you've got interdimensional UFOs, you've got man-made UFOs, you've got USOs, unidentified submerged objects, you've got extratemporal UFOs from our future. So now you've got 5 things. This is a multi-headed hydra. And now you've got the intelligence community with the CIA, the NSA, muddying the waters with disinformation. And
Mm.
you can see we've been doing this for 80 years and we still don't know exactly what's going on.
Well, that's a question that I know you won't have the answer to this question, but
Mhm.
I have to ask it anyway. How do we unpick that so that we can slot those things into those
I
boxes?
know, I know. I don't think that a frontal approach will work. There's been talking about storming Area 51, and that's
Mm.
not going to. You got to come in through the back door. You got to come in through the defense contractors and dig down into the Reagan black budget and dig down into the defense contractors. That's the way I like to approach it. A frontal approach will never work, will never work. And we've already been in this game for 80 years. Congress has dragged their heels on this, and you can see that they're just going to wait out the clock and keep kicking that can down the road, and we'll be here another 80 years, and we still won't know what's going on. So really, I think that this subject matter, which was classified higher than the atomic bomb during World War II, it was classified above top secret. The whole concept of UFO crash retrievals is really the crown jewels of the United States government. It's the crown jewels, and they're not going to let them go easily. I mean, you can see they're going to fight very hard to keep it under wraps. But this subject was classified so high, was classified above top secret. That's where Timothy Good got the name of his book, Above Top Secret. That's where it comes from. So when you talk about crash retrievals, now you're dealing with the varsity team now.
I suppose it brings up this question, right? Again, you would have been posed this a number of times, but I want to ask it, which is, if it's such a big thing, what is the big thing that needs to be kept secret? Is it a change in paradigm for the human nature, i.e., could it be that we were created, engineered, that sort of thing, that would really destroy our worldview? Is it that religions, would bugger everything up, to excuse my French, but you know what I mean, mess things up if we mess with the religious side of things? Or is it that we might then give weapons to enemy states that then could fire at us, because if we said, right, there is 0 point energy and everyone has it, somebody could nefariously use it? Is it a protectionist thing, do you think?
Okay, well, the best way that I could answer that question is, I do believe there is a 5% contingent of religious implications to this.
Okay.
They might think that it's bigger than 5%. It might go to 10%. And I do think there's religious implications, but that's not a deal breaker. I think that's a very low percentage. The major part of the cover-up deals with the propulsion systems of these vehicles, which would doom the utilities. The multi-trillion dollar utilities would go out of business if we, as common people, got the same technology associated with the propulsion systems of these vehicles. So, because now you're talking about internal combustion engines would go out of business. The coal fire plants would go out of business. All of you could call it the solar farms would go out of business. The windmill farms would go out of, multi-trillion dollar industry would go out of business. So that is a primary factor for the cover-up, for sure.
And you know what the shame of that is, Michael? That it's, again, everything comes down to this. It's all money related.
Yes.
It literally is the root of all evil, then, you could argue.
It is, yeah. And then we've got the weapon systems that they can exploit from these vehicles as well. That's the other part of the cover-up. So these two things, I believe, are the heart of the cover-up. The religious implications is something that's on the back burner. I'd give it 5 or 10% max. That's not going to be a deal breaker. So that's the reason why they're keeping this under wraps for all eternity, for all this time. And it's a shame that everybody had to pay the price for this. And
I completely agree.
I hope that we can overcome this, but these legacy UFO crash retrieval witnesses were long since past chasing the Undertaker now. They're almost all gone. And when they refer to in Congress and they use the term legacy UFO crash retrieval, what they're referring to is Leonard Stringfield's case. Leonard Stringfield's firsthand military witnesses. That's what they're referring to when they make that statement.
Right, so I think now would be an apt time. You can share your screen should you like, so we can go into some of the work that you've gone across, retrieval processes, etc., etc. So I'll hand over to you to do whatever you see fit.
So we can go through some of these cases here. And the title of this lecture is Retrievals of the Third Kind, Cosmic Crashes, Corpses, and Cover-Ups. And if I go to the next slide, does it track for you too?
It does indeed.
It does. Okay, good. Now, we kind of talked about this in the beginning here. I believe that the crash retrievals are the ultimate holy grail of all of this. The 80 years of UFO research has led us in 2026 to this point in history. We've already had congressional hearings. They've already admitted about the crash retrieval programs, but it's the crash retrievals that will facilitate disclosure. And why is that? Because the crash retrievals contain the craft, the debris, and the bodies all rolled up into one entity. And this is the kind of physical hardware that it's going to take to move this field forward. Anything less than this, and I'm talking about a CE1 or a CE2, anything less than this, and all of us will be here another 50 years and we still won't know what's going on. That's why it's come down to us now. It's come down to the common people, grassroots crusade, you could call it, to track down the remaining witnesses that loaded these craft onto 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks, people who were involved in the pathology, the autopsies, the x-ray technicians. It's these people, the first-hand military personnel dealing with this, that need to be located, brought into Congress, and then their bosses can be tracked down, which will lead us to the craft themselves. That's the direction this needs to go.
And I agree with you 100% because this is literally the breadcrumb trails to the physical evidence that people have
That's
cried
right.
out to for years. Yes,
That's right. That's right.
bang
You
on.
got it. You got it.
Lush.
A couple quick announcements here. I'll bypass 1 through 3 just to say that what I want to present here. These are computer generated forensic composite illustrations based on the military witnesses of Leonard who tracked them down. And this is where I got the information. This is essentially how Leonard got to where he was. And these are his sources. So he had 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists and mathematicians, Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So you can see this is the caliber of firsthand witnesses that Leonard dealt with. And so we're
Yeah.
talking about, good sources here. A couple of quick quotes. UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper. Number 2, there are not now nor ever have been any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And that's their official policy from their press release back in July 1980. So in this presentation, we're going to take Leonard Stringfield's firsthand military witnesses, and we're going to go up against the United States Air Force. And we're going to see if this claim that they made is actually correct. This is Leonard Stringfield. I want to highlight his work, what he's done. I mean, nothing short of miraculous what this guy has put together. And he's an unsung hero in ufology. He's almost completely forgotten about. He died in 94, and it's like no one even knows this guy. He is the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrieval. And over a 30-year period, he collected dozens and dozens of these first-hand military witnesses. What he did was just amazing. We want to talk a little bit about his background here. So he was born in 1920. He grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, this guy already memorized the entire dictionary. In fact, he was so good that they gave him a nickname. They called him Webster because he
Yeah.
literally memorized the entire dictionary. So when you think about what this means and the implications of what this means, it means that this is the perfect gentleman to be cataloging these firsthand military witnesses. Perfect guy for it. He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. During World War II, he served in the intelligence service of the 5th Air Force of the Southwest Pacific Theater. He wrote 2 books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0, 1957, Situation Red, the UFO Siege, 1977. Next one's interesting. He served as director of the world's largest UFO research group in the mid-1950s. Civilian, Research Interplanetary Flying Objects. And the first 2 weeks of the organization, they got 8,000 letters. So this was very early on in UFO research, and there was a huge interest. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation. And the reason why is, there's two reasons why. Number one, back in 78, the whole concept of UFO crashes was very early. It was very almost unknown, just coming on the public radar screen. And number two is when he gave his presentation at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton, he preserved an important part of our national history by revealing the cases, but the names had to be kept under wraps. So there was no independent third-party analysis that people could do to verify these claims. And so there was a lot of pushback. And so there was this huge, thing going on at the MUFON Symposium. He passed away December 18th, 1994. And so now we're just left with his legacy. Now, there was one event in Leonard's life that completely changed the trajectory of his existence, his entire being, you could say. And that was this event right here. August 30th, 1945, Leonard had a Foo Fighters sighting from inside a twin-engine C-46 while traveling from Okinawa to Iwo Jima. And so there were at least two Foo Fighters, and he was one of about 11 other people inside the twin-engine aircraft. One of the engines sputtered out, and they were preparing to ditch in the ocean. But when these Foo Fighters peel away, the engine came back on, and they landed safely. And this event changed his life. He never forgot it. It started his lifelong interest in UFOs.
And that's what really interests me the most, is that point. Because otherwise, imagine if he hadn't seen those Foo Fighters, you wouldn't be here talking about him now, presumably, unless there was another impact event that pushed him there.
This is the one event that started it all. Yes.
I love that. I love that.
So here's Newcastle Sun, January 3rd, 1945. Foo Fighters are latest. Pilots flying over Germany at night report that strange balls of fire are following them around on their missions. They have christened these strange phenomenon Foo Fighters. So what we're dealing with here is, and I'm going to go to the next slide here, you've got Allied B-17 pilots flying over Germany, flying over Berlin with the ball bearing plants. And you've got these 3-foot to 5-foot diameter red, yellow, and orange globes circling around these B-17s. And then they peel away. Not only did it happen with the B-17 pilots, but it also happened with the other B-24 Liberator pilots and the B-29 pilots in the Pacific Theater. And here we have author continues quest for truth about UFOs. What I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. Well, that's a bold statement. This is from Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Even if one of these cases is true, then it would be a huge thing. Absolutely. I want to mention too that at one time there were 22 bank boxes of original correspondence letters, drawings, audio tapes. There were sketches involved in this, and this is the kind of information from the first-hand military witnesses that needs to go to Congress. That's what needs to happen here. But at one time, there were 22 bank boxes of original material. So I want to take your audience then into the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio. And I found it very ironic that here you have Leonard Stringfield in Dayton, Ohio at the MUFON Symposium, and literally a couple of miles down the road, you've got Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where they have the bodies. I just thought that was so interesting. So here is Leonard at the podium giving his lecture. And what he did is he presented the results of his symposium proceeding. And I'm going to go to the next slide here. And this is the front cover page of his symposium proceeding. Retrievals of the Third Kind, a case study of alleged UFOs and occupants in military custody. This is a 100-page proceeding. This was a bombshell proceeding back at the time. In this proceeding, he presented 12 of his firsthand military witnesses. And we want to go over some of those in our presentation here. Everything that we'll be talking about today comes from this book. So I encourage people who are interested in this to get a copy of this book. It's not cheap, and it's about 2 inches thick, but it's called UFO Crash Retrievals, The Complete Investigation Status Reports 1 through 7 by Leonard Stringfield. And in this book, it gives you the dates, the locations, the specific details of the crash retrieval, where the bodies were sent, what type of autopsies were taken, 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks being sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Edwards North Base Complex, Homestead Air Force Base, Eglin Air Force Base. This is the Rosetta Stone for all the crash retrievals. That's why this is so important, so vitally important.
I'll get a link
Now,
to that book in the description so people
yeah,
can get it
yeah.
should they wish.
So within Leonard's publication, there's 119 crash retrieval cases. Through Ryan Wood's publication, Magic Eyes Only, subtitle Earth's Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology, we have an additional 104 crash retrievals. When you add that to Leonard's 119 crash retrievals, now we're talking about some real good firepower, some really good firepower.
Well, that's a
And then
shed load
going,
more than I've heard because I was under the impression there was like maybe 13 to 20x,
no, there's
worldwide, but
100,
there's clearly not.
yeah, there's 104 cases within this publication. And so now we're building up a case to go against the Air Force, who already said that we don't have any bodies or craft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's their July 1980 press report. That's what they told us. However, we got another 104 crash retrieval cases in this book. So
Mm.
they're beginning to backpedal and falter and stumble at this point because we're just keep slamming them with more military witnesses, and it's going to be harder and harder for them to deny this because it's their own military personnel that are coming forward telling us that we do have these cases. All right, now, before we begin and dive into the cases, let's go over to Las Vegas and we'll go over to Caesar's Palace, and we're going to put down one chip because we've got 119 chips on a 120 space roulette wheel, okay? And you can see we can't lose. We mathematically, we can almost not even lose. That the odds are in our favor. All we need is one of these cases to be correct, and the whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existence completely falls apart. It's the odds are in our favor. We only need one. We only need one. Well, we got well over 119. And then I want to kind of dive into this really quickly. In America, we have something called our First Amendment right. It's our right to free speech. It's our right to question authority. And you do too. You do as well.
Oh no,
You
we
guys
don't. Not
do
at
as
the
well.
moment.
Not at the moment. But, so what that means is, in point of fact, it means that it's our constitutional obligation to question authority. And if
Yes.
you extrapolate that to its furthest extent here, it means that the United States Air Force doesn't own anything, right? They don't own anything. It's owned by the taxpayers. So we own the aircraft, we own the facilities, we own the runways, we own the hangars, we own all the support equipment, we pay for all the employees. So we have every right to question authority. And that's something going into these cases, we just want to keep that in mind.
I
So
agree.
let's go to the UAP hearings, July 26, 2023. We got Ryan Graves, Navy pilot, David Grush, U.S. Air Force Intel, David Fravor, Navy pilot. And so what did David Grush tell us? And here he is, quote, I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval program. This is what he said within open congressional hearings. Let's go to the next one. Waterloo Region Record, July 27th, 2023. Here he says, whistleblower says multi-decade program that captures UFOs is being concealed. So again, this is a bombshell coming from U.S. Air Force intel personnel here. I want to give credit to my good friend Rudy Gardea, who did all of the original sketches for this presentation. And we're going to start right here. This is 1942. This is long before Roswell. This is one of Leonard Stringfield's firsthand witness. This is at an Army base north of Georgia that even Leonard didn't even know where it was. And this is page 319 in the book. The witness served in a key civil capacity. The witness stated that the craft, when it came down, it hit the side of the facility. It ripped open a whole breach on the side of the craft. So you can see Rudy's drawing here. We've got a tear in the craft itself. Now, this thing was about 15 feet in diameter. It was about 10 feet tall. The witness said that there were three elements of this interior. Number one, there was a seating area. Number two, there was a control area. Number three, there was a lower area that contained an entryway hatch. You can kind of see there was a panel area with buttons and switches. Now, the witness also said that there were four crew members that were taken alive. One was female. They were 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, and milky white skin, and they had teeth, according to the witness. Witness also said that written along the outer circumference of the craft were these hieroglyphic type writings, also on the interior wall of the craft itself. Let's go to the next slide.
May I just ask a question here?
Go ahead.
You know, the one that said this one is female. How do they know that? Because a lot of the times you hear reports of, straight nothing, etc.
Right. They surmised that because that entity had breasts, and it's not the only time that I've got that. I don't want to go too deep off the concept here, but I've got two cases within the Stringfield collection of military firsthand witnesses stating that at least one of these ETs within the group that was retrieved had breasts, so they believe it was female. Yep,
Gotcha.
It's not completely unknown. Here is the blow up of the hieroglyphic writing. And so what I'm thinking is, since there's multiple cases of markings on these vehicles, and we could potentially have over 100 of these things recovered, there must be a transnational team organizing these, cataloging these, trying to decipher and decrypt and decode what this means. What do these symbols mean? They got to have 3-ring binders full of all this. Let's go to the next slide. So what I want to do now is I want to take your audience into the Army facility north of Georgia, and I'm going to walk you around the craft, show you the hull breach of the craft. Then we're going to go up inside the craft. I'm going to show you the control room. I'm going to show you the seating area. So let's go ahead and go over here. So here's some of these hieroglyphic writings based on the firsthand witness that Leonard Stringfield tracked down. Now let's go a little bit off to the left. Here's the hull breach on the side of the craft. And then we want to go up inside the craft. So I'm going to give you a front view of the stairway that takes you to the divider, separating the seating area to the control area. And now we're on the top of the steps. We're going to go ahead and look inside. And this is the best forensic composite illustration that we could come up with based on the firsthand military witness or the key civilian witness that Leonard tracked down. So off to the left, we've got the seating area. There was reports that there was a wraparound window, so we've incorporated that. There were hieroglyphic markings on the inside of the interior wall of the upper dome of the craft. We'll do a blow up of the seating area. Now we're going to pan over to the section where they have the control area. This is the control area. Here's this wraparound window that was talked about. This is a blow up of the control section. So you've got these buttons and switches here. We'll do one more blow up here. Something like this was potentially recovered in 1942, long before Roswell, somewhere at an Army base north of Georgia that even Leonard didn't know. Here is the view of the bodies. Again, they said they were about 5 feet tall. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. That comes up multiple times. We'll do a quick blow up here, and then we'll do one more blow up of the bodies that were recovered back in 1942. Now, next one, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. Again, long before Roswell here. Now, before the Army Air Corps became a separate entity of the government, of the defense industry, it was still known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. It had not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until 1947. So back in 46, it was still known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Our source is a 7-year-old boy. His name is Tex Martin. His father also was involved in this, and he was an avionics mechanic. Now, he worked what I believe to be hangar complex number 4, and this is a period correct photograph of hangar complex number 4. I believe it took place in the E bay, which is the last one on the right. And this is
Okay.
page 242, 243 in the book. So if anyone wants to follow along, those are the page numbers. So within this adjoining cafeteria, now the son is with the father here, there was a janitor, and the janitor saw this 7-year-old boy, thinking that this is a fine young gentleman. Why don't I buy him a soda pop? So he asked his father if it would be okay. The father said, yes, it's okay. And so he handed this 7-year-old boy this soda pop. And I've got Rudy's drawing here that kind of shows you what this looked like. And as soon as he did, a doorway opened up, a military personnel walked through the doorway, and 7-year-old Tex Martin peered inside this hangar. And what did he see? And this is all roughed out in rough format here. He saw a 18 to 20 foot off-white dish-shaped craft with 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference. It had tripod landing gear legs. It was sitting on the hangar floor. There were military personnel with carbides, with rifles. There was at least one Jeep in there. And then he said that there were 2 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy trucks with debris, which was unknown, and tarps covering the debris. This is what this 7-year-old boy said here. So let's go to the next sketch. And you can kind of see here, Tex Martin is looking, he's in the background, he's looking toward us now. And we've got all the monuments laid out. We've got the tractor trailers, we've got the Jeep, we've got the dish-shaped craft. He also said that there were at least 3 deceased ET corpses laying on the hangar floor on stretchers. And so this is a huge thing.
Hmm.
He saw it, and his father saw it as well. So we don't have to rely on the testimony of this 7-year-old boy. His father saw this as well. So let's go take you to the refined drawing. And now this is coming into view here. Tex is looking out the doorway toward us because we're looking inside the hangar now. We've got the Jeep, we've got the military personnel, we've got the dish-shaped craft, we've got the tractor trailers, we've got the bodies here. So what we want to do now is we want to take this to the next level. Let's see if we can do a 3D full color rendering, make this case come alive. And so this was the very first pass 3D rendering. And this is back at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, back in 1946, before Roswell. Now I wanted to think, could I take this to the next level? Could I add even more realism to make this come alive to the best of my ability? And this was my final rendering here.
Oh, I like
This
that.
was at the theoretical limit of what I could do. Now, there's probably people that could take this beyond what I can do, and that's great. And I'd appreciate the help. I want to put out a call. If anyone can take this even to the next level and add more realism, let's do it. Let's make these as realistic as we can possibly do here. So this is Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. Now, there was another case, exact same time frame, exact same location. Now, this was a private who worked in records management. The source is Space, the Final Frontier by Clark McClellan, page 59. So same location, same time frame. And this is the front cover of the book, Space, the Final Frontier by Clark McClellan. And within that book is this sketch. Now, this was a crash retrieval that came down and it was retrieved in Arkansas, put on a railroad flat car, and went all the way from Arkansas by railroad to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio at the time. Now, the witness said that the craft was 15 feet in diameter, it was 7 feet tall, highly polished mirror reflective exterior, no visible means of propulsion, no wings, no ailerons, no flight controls. There were no rivets, there were no seams, there were no socket head cap screws, there were no hex head cap screws, there were no weld marks. This thing was antiseptically sterile, polished aluminum exterior. This is my AutoCAD drawing that gives you an idea what this thing looks like. Now, what I've done on the upper right is I've peeled back the skin, showing you what this gentleman said. He said that there was a central column that ran from the bottom of the craft through the center, terminating at the upper section of the craft. And then he said that there were white lab coat technicians that were trying to breach the hull of this craft with a diamond tip drill bit. So if you look at the window left of center, I've got this red dot. That is the attempted point of entry with diamond tip drill bits. So they talked about this, and I've got at least 3 cases within the Stringfield collection of these diamond tip drill bits that they're desperately trying to get into these things. And in this case, they couldn't do it. So here was my very first pass kindergarten level illustration
Oh, it's
to
good.
give
I
you
like
an
it.
idea what this thing looks like, right? We got to start committing these things to good drawings here. Here's Joseph Wraith, who did a much better job, and he's even got that red dot on the left of center window. But that just gives you an idea of what it looks like. He's also peeled back the skin so you can see that central column. So this private records management, he goes into the hangar. He has to deliver a letter to a high-level military personnel there. He's met with a friend who's a guard, and his friend said, you know what? Why don't you come follow me? I got something I want to show you. So he walks him back to the back of the hangar, and he shows him this dish-shaped craft. But I mean, it's just unbelievable. Now, this private records management said that there was a tarp that was folded up, sitting on the hangar floor to the right of the craft itself. He also said that there was an open toolbox in the foreground. There was an electric drill with a diamond tip drill bit within the chuck of the electric drill. That's the scene here that we want to look at here. So here's my full color rendering. This gives you an idea of what this actually may have looked like back in 1946. And then we'll go one more here. Something like this, according to this private records management, was there. And as we go through these cases, the body count goes up, the craft count goes up, and we've got so many cases of these dish-shaped craft being sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the late 1940s, throughout the 50s, going into the early 1960s. For a couple of reasons. Number one, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has the Foreign Technology Division, so they can test the tensile strength of these vehicles. They also have the Aeromedical Lab there, so they can test tissue samples. So it's the perfect place to be sending these things. Now we want to go on to this document. Letter from Nathan Twining to Air Force Brigadier General George Shulgin, dated September 23rd, 1947. Here he says, quote, the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. Later in the document, it talks about the form, fit, and function of these vehicles. It talks about the flight path characteristics. So, this is a gentleman with the need to know, and he's confirming the existence of these things. All right, next one. Papagos Indian Reservation west of Globe, Arizona, January 1947. So we're already 3 or 4 in here. We haven't even made it to Roswell yet. The push pin is the approximate location where this took place. This was near the Superstition Mountains, west of Globe, Arizona. Witness served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Page 93, case A10 in the book. Let's go to the next slide. So this gentleman is with a friend. They're in a Jeep. They're somewhere around the Superstition Mountains, and they're driving down an unimproved road. And all of a sudden, they are stopped and challenged and questioned and told to vacate the area immediately. But it was already too late, because another 50 feet down the road, off to the left, there was a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that came in at about a 40-degree angle. It had a low-rise dome on top. There was a series of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. He also said there were two rings wrapped around the outer circumference as well. And he saw all of this. So he was at the right place at the right time at the very beginning of a crash retrieval operation. Let me go to the next slide. This gives you a kind of a full color
Yeah.
rendering of what this may have looked like. And then let's take it one step further and make it as realistic as I could possibly do here. But
Yeah,
this
I
just
think it
gives
looks
you an
ace.
idea of what this may have looked like west of Globe, Arizona. Now, within the Stringfield dictation notes, there were 65 three-ring binders that had all the details of a lot of these crash retrieval cases from the firsthand military witnesses. One of these Stringfield witnesses stated, and there was one piece of paperwork to back this up. According to Mr. Robert Helmold of Foote Brothers Gear and Machine Company of Chicago, they conducted metallurgical analysis on pieces from a saucer that crashed in Arizona back in 1947. It's sounding a lot like the case we just examined. Now, I can't confirm that it is, but it's checking all the boxes. So I started going down the rabbit hole. I wanted to find out, what does this company make? Foote Brothers Gear and Machine Company. What do these guys make? So I looked at the newspaper clippings. Chicago Tribune, January 15th, 1955. It makes gears as large as 21 feet in diameter, weighing 45,000 pounds, and others small enough to put on a watch chain. Its gears are found on airplanes of all types, including jets and helicopters. In a year, it will make thousands of different gears for use by industry. So here you've got this crash retrieval in Arizona, same time frame, and then it says that there was an organization talking about Foote Brothers Gear and Machine Company that pieces were sent here, and it's checking all the boxes. I mean, this is the perfect organization to receive debris from a crash retrieval, the perfect organization. Hendricks Commercial Register, 1909. You can see the size of the gears this place makes. I mean, this is the place. The purchasing agent, May 1923. So if something was recovered in the Arizona desert that had kind of an arc radius with teeth on it, they'd send it to this Chicago company without a doubt. This is absolutely the place to go. Next one, White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Technical Sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force, is our witness. Page 196 in Leonard's book. Now, what you see here is a map of the outer perimeter section of White Sands Missile Range in yellow. According to the witness, this retrieval took place on the northern part of the range. So let's go to the next slide here. This witness said that the craft measured about 150 feet in diameter. This is a huge craft. The whole scene, according to the witness, was excruciatingly well lit. They had light-alls, they had spotlights, they had searchlights trained on this craft, tipped up at a 30-degree angle. He said it had a low-rise dome. He said that there were cameramen with still cameras snapping shots of this. He said that there were personnel with Geiger counters walking around this, checking for radiation. He said that there were cameramen with motion picture film cameras recording all of this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Let me go to the next slide. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like at White Sands Missile Range, which plays a big role in all this. And then we'll go a step further here. Something like this was recorded. Photographs were taken. Let me do one more. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like over at White Sands Missile Range. And then let's go to the next slide here. And this is the actionable item. Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. And see, that's where we have a problem here. That's where we're running into this brick wall. They always talk about in congressional hearings that they don't have any physical evidence to back these claims up. Well, this witness just told us that not only do they have still photographer and photos, but they got motion picture film reel of this. So they can't claim that there's no evidence. The problem we're running into, though, is that these senators and congressmen within these congressional hearings, they don't have a need to know because they don't have a high enough security clearance and they haven't been read into these programs. So how can they declassify something they've never been read in on or briefed about? That's the problem we're running into here. Next one, UFO crash retrieval 1947, seen at a warehouse at Berkeley University, of all places, Berkeley University. Now, this gentleman was a metallurgical engineer. He's deceased. His name was Albert Bruce Collins, and this is page 197 in the book. And what this gentleman said, and when you read his testimony in the book, this guy's not lying. This guy's not lying. He's telling the truth. He said he was at the right place at the right time when this tractor trailer backed into a warehouse at Berkeley University. It could still be there now. I can't confirm it for sure. Could still be there. But he said that this was an egg-shaped craft about 30 feet across, 15 feet tall. He said on the forward part of this egg-shaped craft, there was a composite panel. At the center of the craft was a 36-inch diameter sphere. It looked like a cracked egg, he said, because this crack went all the way from the top of the egg all the way to the bottom. And then in the center where this orb was, or sphere, or egg yolk, there was another composite panel that wrapped around the outer circumference. And then he said that on the lower right of the craft, there was a hull breach that we talked about in the beginning with shrapnel and debris sticking out, like there was an internal implosion. You go to the next slide here. This gives you an idea of what it may have looked like at Berkeley University. And then let's take it one step further. Something like this could be at a warehouse right now as we speak at Berkeley University. And this guy was charged to basically look at the craft, look at the debris. He said he tested the tensile strength of the material of the craft itself. He handled the debris himself. He saw it multiple times. So it's a very good case. Next one, Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California, July, August 1947. Witnesses were two 19-year-old workers that basically got a good look at this. Now, the craft was seen to come down the night before by the foreman. So when the two 19-year-old workers got to work the next morning, this foreman said, "Hey guys, why don't you follow me? I got something I need to show you." So we'll go to the next slide here. Here is the original sketch from the Leonard Stringfield dictation notes. This was not a large craft, about 9 feet in diameter. This was about 4 feet tall, had a flat top, a double row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. And I don't think these are windows. I think these are sensor arrays. I don't think these are windows. In the report, there was a map showing X marks the spot. So if you look here, there's Monterey, California. Off to the right, you've got Gonzales, and then just southwest of there. So if we could go back in time and use this map, I think I could take I could take them plus or minus 300 feet to where this came down. We got a good, accurate map. Now, here is my first pass. This is an AutoCAD drawing I came up with. It gives you the dimensions of the craft. This is not a large craft. This was the first pass SolidWorks rendering that gives you an idea of what it looks like. And you can see these sensor arrays wrapped around the outer circumference. And then this is Rudy's drawing. So these two 19-year-old workers, they walked up to the craft. One of them got up enough confidence to go next to it and kick it with his boot. He made physical contact with
Kicking the
craft
tires,
itself.
yeah.
Yep, he was kicking the tires out. Now, he said that within 5 minutes of them coming up to the craft, there was a convoy of military vehicles that showed up, just like they always do, rapid response. At least one Jeep was there. There was one covered 6x6 troop transport that was towing a trailer. And the military personnel told the two 19-year-old workers to get out of here immediately. You're not allowed to be here. But they saw the military personnel manhandle the craft, put it on the trailer, cover it with a tarp, put chains on it, and ship it out of there. They saw the entire retrieval operation. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Something like this was recovered in Salinas, California, in a carrot patch of all places. And, it's the testimony of these witnesses and firsthand military witnesses that just can't be denied. When you take this research as a whole, as a complete united coalition, you've got some good firepower here. Let me go to the next slide. This shows you what this carrot patch looks like. And we've got the sensor array here. I'd love to know where they brought this thing. I'd love to know exactly what happened to it.
Oh, I think we all would, yeah.
You know. All right, next one. Now, this came from one of Stringfield witnesses here, and we're asking the question, the $64 million question. Where are the top secret files? We're talking about files now. Where are the top secret files on UFO crash retrievals being stored? And this witness said they are kept in 3 large computer banks spread throughout the country. And he said basically that if you get this computer file, you get the crash retrieval information. And he said that one of the 3 was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So they obviously have a computer dump file at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He also said that another computer dump file was at CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia. And the third one was NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. And then he left us with this cryptic remark, quote, "They will bend in any direction to keep them secret." So our job then is, what are we going to do? Are we going to force our way into NSA headquarters? It's not going to work. Are we going to beat down the walls at CIA headquarters? It's not going to work. Because obviously what they did is they diversified their portfolio and they spread this information out. Obviously that's what they did. So a frontal attack is not going to work. What we have to do is we got to come in through the back door, got to track down the witnesses who recovered these, see if they're receptive to a discussion about this. We need to show them the drawings, the sketches, the illustrations, and to see if they would be more likely to be receptive to talk about it. That's the approach we've got to make. Because a lot of these people, they're gone, or they're 80 or 90 years old, and some of them want to talk about this. Some of them will adhere to their national security oaths. However, the problem with that is when they sign these NDA agreements within the defense contractors, these NDA agreements are extra constitutional, thereby making them null and void because they bypass the Congress, they bypass checks and balances, they bypass the Constitution of the United States government, thereby making them null and void. So they're not bound to their national security agreements. That's the angle that we can use on this. All right, next one.
So the key question there, though, before you carry on, is do those witnesses know that?
No, they don't, because this happened so long ago in their lives. Maybe some of them do, but I'm guessing they don't. They're not even aware of it. That's why we need to tell them about this, that it's okay to come forward. It's okay to come forward because the agreements that they signed 50 and 60 years ago are extra constitutional. They bypass checks and balances. There's no congressional oversight. There's no public scrutiny. And it goes against the Constitution, making it null and void. So we know where the files are kept, at least the electronic dump files. The same witness said that the location of where the ET craft are being stored are number 1, NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. They've got at least one craft there. MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. I personally was friends with a U.S. naval personnel he was based on one of the destroyers in the Pacific. He was one of those gunners that you see in all the black and white movies. He was
Hmm.
one of those gunners. His name is Jack Pickett, no longer with us, but he saw four dish-shaped craft at MacDill and knew that there was a fifth one that probably wasn't ours, stored in one of the hangars at MacDill. True story. The other location was Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Goldsboro, North Carolina, where they have at least one craft there. Now, there are many, many, many dozens more locations where they store craft and debris and bodies, but this is just a small fraction, according to one of Stringfield's witnesses. Obviously, they're working on the principle of no single point failure. They
Yes.
are going to diversify their portfolio. If there's a flood, if there's a fire, if there's a tornado, if there's an earthquake, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You got to spread out your assets. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did. Next one, C-119 flying boxcar, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, prior to 1951. We don't have an exact date. All it was said was prior to 51. My best guess, 1948. The source was a highway construction engineer, page 32 in the book. Craft was 9 feet in diameter, two bodies were recovered, minimum, two bodies minimum recovered. What you see here is a photograph of a craft. This is the aircraft that was involved in the retrieval operation. It's the C-119 flying boxcar. So I did some digging here. The inside wall thickness of the cargo bay on the C-119 is 9 feet 10 inches across. So it's a mathematical certainty that the craft recovered was no longer or wider than 9 feet across. You have to allow 5 inches of clearance on both sides. That gives you a 9 foot diameter craft. I know that it's a mathematical certainty. It
Hmm.
can't be any bigger than that. So here's Rudy's drawing. This gives you an idea of what it looks like during this retrieval operation. And this construction engineer, he was tasked by the U.S. military to aid in the retrieval of this dish-shaped craft. Let's go to the next slide. This gives you an idea of what the retrieval operation looked like. You can see the bodies in the foreground. You've got the craft on this inclined plane. You've got the cargo bay doors opened up, and they're loading the craft into the bottom back section of the C-119. This is a blow up showing you the loading process. And then let me go one more here. And this shows you the bodies. Now, according to the witness, this is in the book that's talked about in the Stringfield publication. This highway construction engineer, he walked over to the deceased bodies and he knelt down. He touched their faces with his fingers. And when he
Whoa.
lifted his hand off their faces, their, their skin stuck to his fingers. These bodies were deceased, they were burnt, they were scorched. This was not for the faint of heart. This was a gruesome scene, but he got to see all of it. He got to see all of it. Now, my good friend Joseph Wraith revisited this case. We added more realism. So, what I want to do is we're going to pretend we're a bird flying around this entire scene. So, I'm going to wrap you around the back end here. I'm going to show you the C-119. We're going to open up the cargo bay doors. We're going to look inside here. So here's about a 45-degree look down angle, and we want to make these cases as realistic as we can possibly make them here. Let's go to the next slide. So now you can kind of see we're at about a 30-degree look down angle. Cargo bay doors are opened up on the C-119. And then this is an eye level scene. You can see they've already started the retrieval operation. They're loading the craft into the C-119 here. Let's do a blow up. And now we can see the retrieval operation is completely in full swing here. And this went down somewhere Sierra Madre mountain range back in 1948 timeframe. Here is a top view looking down to the bodies. And you can see these are small. They have to be. They have to fit within a 9 foot
Yeah.
diameter dish-shaped craft. So they have to be small. So this is period correct. The timing is correct. The scale is correct. And this is the theoretical limit of the best we can do based on the witness report. Next one, Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, 1950, Hangar 1. This is a radar operator. This is page 57 in the book. Now, what you see here is this absolutely massive blimp naval hangar. Now, this hangar is famous. It still exists today. This hangar is so large that it has its own weather inside. That's how large this
Does
hangar
it
is.
really?
It has
Whoa.
its own weather inside. I mean,
It's a
this is a
great looking
legitimate
building.
shoot. Yep. Now, I've actually been inside this hangar. Now, according to this radar operator, and we're going to go to the next slide here. He walked through these double doors, and when he got inside, there was an MP guarding a 100-foot diameter dish-shaped craft sitting on the hangar floor. He said it had a low-rise dome on top. There was porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference, and he was challenged immediately and escorted out of this hangar, but he did get to see it. I believe this guy. He's a radar operator. What would be the point of lying? Now, after he saw it, he called his mother and he said, quote, "It was certainly no aircraft of ours," end quote. So let me see if we can make this come alive here. Something like this was seen at Hangar 1 by a radar operator back in 1950. I don't think this guy's lying to us. You might get one or two of these Stringfield witnesses that may be
You still there, Michael?
witnesses.
Oh yeah.
They're not all lying. There's just no way they're not all lying. They're telling us about this UAP crash retrieval program here. Let's go to the next one. Now, the source for this one is John Schuessler, the founding forefather of MUFON. I know John. He's a good guy. He's an honest gentleman. There's no reason that he would lie. Now, his father told him that he was based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in 1952. And he was kind of at this entryway gate. And he had to check the manifest of everything that came into the base. And here he says, quote, "Everything delivered had to pass through me." This is this gentleman that John Schuessler's father knew. So this is back in 1952. This is page 10, abstract 3 within the book. And he said that one night, a tractor trailer came up to the entryway gate, and on this trailer was a dish-shaped craft covered by a tarp. And then he said that there were wooden crates with bodies inside. And this guy saw all this. I don't think John Schuessler is lying to us about this. I don't think John's father would make up this story. So I know it's secondhand dead man's testimony, but when you correlate that to the other witnesses, it's all checking the boxes here. Let's go to the next slide. I took the information from John Schuessler within this report, and I did the very best I could do. Something like this came up to the gate over at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base some night in 1952. And I believe it to be an accurate account of what this actually looked like. There were bodies packed in crates, according to the witness. Next one, 1952, off-limits room at the Pentagon. So this is a Pentagon worker. Page 152, case 1, another case where I don't think this witness is lying. What she's telling us is the truth. I believe this woman. I believe she's telling us the truth. And what she said is somehow she went down into the basement at the Pentagon. So now she's in this dark, dimly lit, dusty room, and there's cardboard boxes there. It's poorly lit. She makes a turn, and when she turns, what does she see? She sees a pickle alien in a glass jar. And
Yeah,
she's
not something you see every day.
no, not something you see every day. And she's shocked and she's surprised. And within a matter of 10 seconds, she feels this hand on her shoulder. It's an MP guard telling her to get out of here immediately. You're not supposed to be in here. So he escorts her out of there immediately. She was probably there less than a minute, but she did see a pickle alien in a glass jar. So let's see if we can go to the next slide, make this come alive a little bit. So this was my very first pass committing this to a color illustration. Not the best, but it gives you an idea. We
Yeah,
did the
yeah, it
best
brings
we
it to
could with
life.
what we have. Let's take it to the next level, and this is my final rendering to make this case come alive. Now, I wanted to do some digging. I wanted to see if if there could be any truth to this. Is there a basement at the Pentagon where they could keep some of this and they could hide it from the public? That brings us to this slide and our good friend Dick Cheney, right? Peninsula Times Tribune, March 25th, 1989. New defense chief gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So here we have Dick Cheney, former vice president. He was at a meeting in one of the upper levels of the Pentagon. When the meeting was over, he went into the elevator. He somehow pressed the wrong button. And what he thought he was going down to was the carport. It dropped him one further down. He opens it up, and here he is at the basement. He gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So it's checking the boxes. It's absolutely checking the boxes. So recently, Dick Cheney passed away.
That's right. Yeah.
Grant Cameron talked to this gentleman. This was years ago on this podcast. And when the phone line came up, he was the first caller in because he had a friend that was interviewing Dick Cheney. And he said, Mr. Cheney, have you been briefed on the subject of UFOs? And if so, by whom and what did you learn? And Dick Cheney came back, well, if I was briefed, it certainly would have been classified and I couldn't talk about it. That's all we got from Dick Cheney. That's all we ever got from Dick Cheney. This was probably the last of the surviving gatekeepers, and he died with the secrets. So Dick Cheney, he didn't help us out. He remained under wraps his entire life, and he took his secrets to his grave. He
Well, he
should have at
certainly
least.
didn't say no, though, did he? And second of all, I don't know if you've seen that thing recently where David Grush had said about Dick Cheney that
Yeah,
he was in control of a lot of this stuff.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. He was one of the gatekeepers. He could have been one of the sole surviving gatekeepers. Uh, George Herbert Walker Sr. was another gatekeeper.
Hmm.
So, you know, it would have been nice for him to have written a letter to be released after his death, but I don't think he did that. I wonder what he told his wife or his daughters. Who knows? Are we ever going to find out?
I
Probably
know.
not.
Lovely
You know,
questions to ask, and we do want the answers to them. That's the problem
yes,
with
we
this
do.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes, we do. So Dick Cheney was certainly in the know. Special note, something very serious appears to have been going on regarding UFO crash retrievals for the year of 1953. I mean, this date keeps popping up again and again and again within the Stringfield notes. 1953, for some reason, just keeps on popping up. So here's Fort Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. H.J., I know his name. He's a private in the Army. Page A1, in this case, A1, page 80. Let's go to the next slide. So this gentleman was at the retrieval operation from the beginning to the end. He saw the whole thing. And what he said was there was an egg-shaped craft that came down 30 feet across, very similar to what our metallurgical engineer said back at Berkeley University warehouse. He said it was 30 feet across. There was a flange that was wrapped around the outer portion of the egg that was still rotating. He said that the ground was still hot to the touch. This is very early in the retrieval operation. And then he said that there were medical personnel that were assisting ETs walking out of the craft. One was being carried off in a stretcher. And he said that they were about 3.5 feet tall. They were wearing a one-piece green tight-fitting flight suit. They had a helmet on. They had mittens on, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. And then he said something that I haven't heard before. These ETs, which you can see in Rudy's drawing here, and you see the medical personnel assisting these ETs walking out. The witness said that they had no knee joint. They could only move by their hip joint. So they had this strange stepping motion as they were walking across the ground, very unusual. And the other gentleman The other military personnel were carrying off their comrade to the open ambulance truck that you see in Rudy's drawing here. So let's do a full color rendering by Joseph Rafe. We want to make this case come alive. We're going to zoom into this case here, and we'll get a little bit closer. Here you can see the ETs, according to the witness, one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They were assisted by medical personnel. They were wearing mittens. They were wearing helmets and about 3.5 feet tall. Here is the blow-up of the comrade that they were trying to establish communication with, being carried off into the ambulance truck. Now let's do one more blow-up here. Shows you an idea of what this whole scene may have looked like. Now, what happened here? What happened to the survivors? According to the source, the survivors had been sent to a hospital and put into isolation, but all soon died. He also learned that the cadavers were sent to a medical center near Washington, D.C. So here we have the firsthand witness. He saw the whole thing. He saw the craft. He saw the bodies. He was told that they eventually died and they were sent to somewhere near Washington, D.C. Well, we know where it is. Walter Reed Army Medical Center, the source for many accounts from Springfield witnesses of bodies being sent there, tissue samples, autopsies, pathologist laboratories. This was ground zero for bodies. I mean, absolutely. This was ground zero for autopsies of recovered ET bodies. Another place that was mentioned is John Hopkins Hospital location of ET autopsies. So between Walter Reed and John Hopkins, we've got X-ray photographs, we've got tissue samples, we probably got test tube experiments. These two places were ground zero for all this probably during the 50s and 60s, going back as far as we can remember within the crash retrieval witnesses. Now, next one here. This witness was flown to an undisclosed location. This is back in April 1953. He was blindfolded. He was driven 30 minutes from the base of operations. When he finally got to where this is all going on, they took off the blindfold, and he said that he saw a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It was in a tent. And he said that they spent at least 2 days analyzing the craft. So there was like metallurgical personnel there. There were people, and I've got some benches here. So they had calipers, they had micrometers, they had metal testing equipment. This is back in 1953, April 1953. Critical note, previously uncleared scientists and engineers or specialists working on UFO crash retrieval operations are always blindfolded before they are transported to a site where top secret UFO research is being conducted. Multiple witnesses talking about how when I was brought to the scene, when they picked me up, they blindfolded me, they put me on a bus with blacked out windows. Well, of course, he didn't know that, but all these things have blacked out windows. When you finally get to where you are, then and only then do they reveal where you're going to be working so that you can't establish breadcrumbs and follow your way back. It's brilliant what these guys did. This is how they've kept this under wraps. They diversify their portfolio and they compartmentalize this information. That's how they've been able to keep this secret all these decades here. This is another one in 1953, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is page 16. Witness saw 2 craft and 4 ET bodies packed in dry ice. Source is head of military security via Charles Wilhelm. Again, page 16, abstract 10. So now we've got 5, 6, and 7 different craft showing up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is another one, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is 1953. This is one of Leonard Stringfield's very original first-hand military witnesses that came to him. This is the first guy that came to him. He was a warrant officer. Page 15, abstract number 8. And this gentleman was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the right place at the right time, when a 4-engine DC-7 troop cargo aircraft taxied up onto the tarmac. Again, this is a period correct photograph of hangar number 4. The one to the right is Bay E, where I have the arrow. I've actually walked in that hangar. This is a long time ago. But this DC-7 taxis up onto the tarmac, and this is a front view looking at the hangar. And these hangars are historic. I mean, they're just
Mm.
absolutely historic. Here you see the DC-7, and you have to picture this scene inside the hangar now. So the DC-7 lands at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, taxis up onto the tarmac. It's now taxiing into the hangar. He said that there was a cargo bay entry section that opened up on the left aft section of the DC-7. And then there was a forklift, and this is all inside the hangar. A forklift pulled up and starts offloading these wooden pallets. On one of these pallets, there were three wooden crates with the lids taken off. And this warrant officer was close enough to look inside these wooden crates. And what he saw were three deceased ET corpses. They were 3.5 to 4 feet tall, all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had oversized heads, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. He said one of them was female because it had breasts. And then he said all three bodies were being suspended off the bottom of the wooden crates with this white netting material to protect them from the dry ice freezer burn below. And you got a real good look at this. So let's go to the next slide here to kind of give you an idea of what this may have looked like. You can see this dry ice fog coming up from the crates. And then what we want to do is we're going to do a 90-degree look down angle to get a real good look at what these bodies may have looked like. This is back at 1953, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, from a warrant officer. And I don't think this guy's lying to us. No reason to lie. This was a firsthand testimony to Leonard at Lunken Airport after a lecture he gave to a couple of pilots. This is like the firsthand witness that came forward. So if you look at all the bullet items that Leonard had been able to put together from the doctors, pathologist reports, people who worked on autopsies of ET bodies, what do they look like? These are the bullet items, according to the doctors. They are 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall. They have two round, sunken in eyes without pupils, heavy brow ridge, large hairless head by human standards, no earlobes, no definitive nose, small slit for a mouth, very thin neck, small torso, wearing a metallic flexible garment. We've heard that so many times. Whenever these ET bodies are recovered, they're usually always wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit that's so fully integrated as to be adhering to their skin. That's how fully integrated it is. Arms described as long and thin, reaching down to the knees. This is exactly what Marion Black Mac Magruder said when he saw the survivor of the Roswell incident, and he saw that at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in April of 1948. He said the survivor looked like Casper the Ghost. He was described as squiggly looking with emaciated body parts. Hands having 4 fingers without thumb, slight webbing, short and thin legs, no toes, skin color, beige, tan, brown, tan, pinkish gray. So if you plug all of these bullet items into a full color rendering, you're going to start with a good sketch by Rudy. So here's the sketch that we came up with based on the pathologist autopsy reports, page 46, page 47. So you've got 3.5 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, heavy brow ridge, kind of emaciated, long hands that go down beneath the knees. You've got webbing between the fingers. It's checking all the boxes. Next slide shows you what they look like. So, you wouldn't want to meet this guy on a Saturday
I
night, but
definitely would not know.
this is what the first-hand witnesses are telling us that these beings look like when they retrieve them from the interior of these crash retrievals. Okay, Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12th, 1954. We want to keep in mind that Walker Air Force Base used to be head of the 509th Bomb Group. This is the same location. It was renamed Roswell Army Airfield to Walker Air Force Base. So we're talking about the same location of the 47 crash retrieval, April 12th, 1954. Now, this gentleman was only 18 years old. He was a photographer. He worked in the Air Force from 1954 to 1955, page 82 in the book. Now, within the report, and anyone can read it, page 82, he was an expert in cameras, in photography, in exposure, in lighting. This guy knew everything about cameras. And so he thought, maybe, just maybe, I could be of some assistance to the Air Force. So he goes to Walker Air Force Base, and then he and his other personnel on the team are ordered to board an H-19 helicopter, which same one that you see here on this slide.
Mm-hmm.
When they get inside, the door closes, and over the PA address system, there is this address. Quote, men, this is not a drill. This is a red alert scramble. So in this case, this was the real thing. This is the real thing. They take off. They head north from Roswell. The big highway is toward their right. They make a 45-degree turn. Now they're heading toward Corona, New Mexico, site of the 47 event. The sun is just going down below the horizon, but it's still a little bit light out. They fly over this low rolling hill, and when they get on the other side, they see this craft. A 50-foot diameter dish-shaped craft came in at a 40-degree angle. It had a rim of lights still lit and rotating along the outer circumference. There was a low-rise dome on top, and he was told to open up the door. So you see here our witness, and there was a spotlight shining down on the scene, and he was told to start taking photographs of the scene. So he documented everything. Now, from his vantage point, he said that he could see 4 deceased ET bodies that were laying next to the craft. They were already dead. Now, the helicopter lands, he gets out of the helicopter, and he said that 2 things became readily apparent. Number 1, the whole localized area was permeated with the smell of automobile battery acid. That's the first thing that he recalled. It had this ammonia battery acid smell. Now, that's something you hear a lot about in these retrieval operations and associated with ET bodies. The next thing that he saw is that he saw jeeps approaching, military personnel approaching, 6x6 troop transport approaching. He was at the very beginning of the retrieval operation. Let's go to the next slide. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. Now, once he was there, he was told to photograph the entire scene, but he could not get any closer than 40 feet from the craft itself. One of the military personnel told him later that there was an additional 2 ET bodies found inside the craft for a grand total of 6 deceased ET bodies recovered. And so that was what happened on this scene. So here's my full color rendering. This gives you an idea of what it may have looked like at night with this H-19 helicopter. And then this is something that I put together for a daytime scene, just to give people an idea of what the scene may have looked like in New Mexico. Now, back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is 1955. We're going to call this lady Mrs. G. We don't know her identity, and she worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the Foreign Materials Division. This was provided to Leonard via Charles Wilhelm, page 17, abstract 12. And when you read this woman's account, she's not lying to us. She has no reason to lie. This is where this woman worked. It looked like the closing scene of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's this big warehouse, and you can picture all these boxes. This is kind of where this woman worked, and we're calling her Mrs. G here. Now, She worked in warehouse operations building 258. And what this woman said, and I don't think she's lying, what she said is that she processed 1,000 components that came from the interior of a UFO crash retrieval. I'm going to repeat that. This woman who worked at the Forward Materials Division within Building 258, she said that she basically cataloged and processed 1,000 components that came from the interior of a crash retrieval. So when we have these congressional hearings and we hear that they don't have any debris and they don't have any evidence, it's completely untrue. This woman is telling us that they've already got 1,000 components. They might not get access to it, but they do have the evidence.
Hmm.
So I spoke to my good friend Rudy, and I said, Rudy, I need you to give me a drawing of Mrs. G, and then I want you to populate all of the shelving with this ET hardware and debris and craft pieces. And I don't know what it looks like. I wasn't there. We have to come up with something. So if you look at this drawing, you can see all the debris and different types of hardware that was recovered. She also said that while she was cataloging all this, there was a military personnel that had a mobile dolly that rolled right past her desk. And she said that she saw two deceased ET bodies that were being preserved in this formaldehyde preservation fluid. So not only did she get to see the debris, but she saw the bodies as well. And she also said that they had this thing set up like an assembly line. When the debris came in, if you could see on Rudy's drawing here, it was photographed. Then it moved to the next location where it was bagged and tagged. Then it moved over to Mrs. G where she cataloged it. And then it was populated in this shelving here. Now, Charles Wilhelm got to Mrs. G 6 months before she passed away. And Mrs. G told Charles Wilhelm this quote. She said, quote, Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave. 6 months later, she died. We got her just in time. This woman is a patriot. She's a trailblazer, and we want to honor her service to this country and to the world, actually. There is absolutely no reason for any of us to doubt what Mrs. G is telling us. There's no reason. We got her just in time. She's an
Well, she had no
American.
benefit, did she? Let's be
No,
fair.
no benefit. She knew she was dying of cancer. She had nothing to gain by talking
Mm.
about this. She let it all hang out and told us everything. There's no reason this woman, she died 6 months later. So here's our full color rendering. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. You've got all that shelving and everything is populated. We've got the craft. We've got the bodies here. We've got debris. They've got the material. There's no doubt about it. Let's keep moving on here. Since over 1,000 components of physical ET hardware exists, this evidence should be tracked down by senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances and should be presented in open public congressional hearings. That needs to happen, like now, like today. That's what needs to happen. We need to get this debris and components that Mrs. G cataloged, and we need to bring them out. We absolutely need to bring them out. Now, we need more women witnesses coming forward. There's no reason why this should all be men coming forward. We need more women coming forward because they were involved in this as well. So not only do we have Mrs. G, but we have June Crane. She grew up in Dayton, Ohio. She worked for the United States government between 1942 to 1952. She worked in classified laboratories. She had a Q clearance. What she stated was very interesting, that she held debris at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And she stated that by 1952, the US government had been involved in 3 UFO crash retrievals. And she spoke to a pilot that stated that he flew ET bodies in wreckage. So she was aware of this. She spoke to a pilot. She held the debris at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. All of her testimony is put into this book by James Clarkson, Tell My Story, June Crane, The Air Force and UFOs. There is this lady was a reference librarian. There's no reason for her to lie.
Mm.
Absolutely no reason for her. I 100% believe her testimony. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1962. Now, this was seen by at least 5 transient pilots at the base. They were part of the 354th Tactical Air Command Fighter Wing. This is back in 1962. And the leader of the fighter wing was in charge of their physical fitness. So they're kind of jogging down the row of hangars at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1962. They were looking for a fourth wall to complete their handball court that they were trying to do. This is page 88 in the book. So they go down the row of hangars. They notice one of these hangars were open, so they ran inside, not thinking anything of it, and they saw a 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. They said that it was propped up by 2 engine test stands. There were stanchions with a rope kind of like around the craft itself. There were military guards with carbides guarding this thing. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Something that looked like this, and they got a real good firsthand look at it. Now, the leader of the joggers is our firsthand witness, and that's who Leonard had dealt with. This is a firsthand military pilot who I don't think is lying to us. And he made a very interesting statement that I reproduced here. The guard challenged by saying, and this is to the pilot who accidentally saw this, the guard challenged by saying, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, sir." I replied to the affirmative, and we turned about face, the joggers, and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old US had developed or had all along flying saucers in service. This military pilot is not lying to us. Not going to
Hell
happen.
no.
He's not lying to us. So we have the testimony of multiple military pilots that saw flying saucers at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is an example of a civilian pilot that worked for Braniff International Airways. He was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is 1963. Source is PJ, captain in the Navy and a pilot for Braniff International Airways. So somehow he was at the right place at the right time, and he encountered 2 flying saucers in a hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in 1963. One was 30 feet in diameter. It could hold 12 people. There was a second smaller craft that could carry 2 people. Now, when he was questioned, and I believe it was the base commander about this, and this base commander said, "What did you see?" And this pilot said, "I didn't see anything, sir." And the guy said, "Good answer." And that's where
Yeah.
it was left. So this guy knew exactly what to say, but he did see 2 dish-shaped craft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1963. Santa Rosa, New Mexico, spring 1963. Now I got this from Ryan Wood in his book Magic Eyes Only. So that credit goes to Ryan Wood for tracking this down, page 217 in the book. Now, our witness was an X-ray lab technician. She worked at the local hospital, and she was 24 years of age. She was told by the doctor that there was some type of accident across town. So she basically gets inside the 1963 Ford Galaxy ambulance car with the doctor. They drive across town, and when they get there, they're met with this scene. The police had already been there. They saw some debris and wreckage nearby. And then she said this quote, "Where are their parents?" She saw at least 2 deceased ET corpses laying on the ground that she thought that they were children. And she couldn't believe this. They loaded up the bodies into the back of the ambulance truck. They brought the bodies back into the hospital. The bodies were photographed. They were X-rayed, and then something bizarre happened. Let me go to the next slide. This gives you kind of a best illustration that we could come up with. It gives you an idea of what this scene may have looked like. And I'm just going to go over these bullet items here. Within an hour of arriving at the hospital, the United States Air Force arrived and ordered all 3 bodies to be removed. They also confiscated all paperwork, notes, graphs, charts, and even undeveloped x-rays. The x-ray technician said she saw a flatbed truck outside with an object that was covered by a tarp. So obviously they came in and they removed all the paperwork, all the x-rays, all the technical notes. They obviously recovered the wreckage and the craft. And then this colonel said this cryptic remark to this x-ray technician. He said, quote, "This did not happen. You are never to speak about this. And remember this, the government has a long arm." So she was threatened,
Yeah, the
just
frighteners.
like the witnesses of Roswell that were threatened as well. So the threatening continues. Even to this day, the threatening continues here. I think we got time for one more here. So this is December 1963, Cherry Point, North Carolina. Out of all of the Leonard Stringfield cases, this one is my favorite.
Oh,
I put
nice.
more research and effort into this one than any one, but this is a Stringfield case. This is a U.S. Marine, and this is December 1963, page 152 in the book. And what this Marine stated was just miraculous. So keep in mind, this is literally a couple days after Kennedy was assassinated at Daley Plaza, November 22nd, 1960. This is just a couple of days afterward here. So he's at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and he is told to board a plane with blacked out windows. So he boards this plane with blacked out windows. Here is the map of Cherry Point, North Carolina Marine Base, and he flies 3 hours in the plane from Cherry Point, North Carolina. When they land, he is told to get out of this thing, out of this aircraft. They lead him over to what we believe to be some type of hangar. And when the hangar bay doors opened up, he said he saw this craft. It looked like a fat hamburger, highly polished mirror reflective exterior, 40 feet in diameter, 15 feet tall. It had a series of at least 9 elliptically shaped opaque windows wrapped around the outer circumference. No visible means of propulsion, no weld seams, there were no rivets, no socket head cap screws. He said that there were lab coat technicians with diamond tip drill bits trying to breach the hull of the craft itself. So you see these red dots
Hmm.
on this drawing here on the bottom. This is the attempted entry with these diamond tip drill bits. Now, he did say that there was this very minute seam, which was the entryway hatch, that was so fully integrated into the craft itself as to become virtually invisible. That's how fully integrated this hatchway was. Let me go to the next slide here. This is Joseph Race rendering. This gives you a better look on what this may have looked like. He's got the red dots, which indicate the attempted point of entry. And then these are the ways they try to get into this craft. Number one, diamond tip drill bits, completely failed. Number two, acetylene cutting torch, that completely failed. Number three, they used the laser. We'll talk about what happened there. Now, this is the original sketch from the Marine. This is not my drawing. This is his drawing. I'm going to break this down here. Upper right, upper left-hand corner. He said that the whole interior of this facility was excruciatingly well lit. There were no shadows on the floor. The whole craft was being propped up off the hangar floor by what looked like scaffolding. They had a catwalk where you could walk around this thing. And then you see these black marks below the craft. Those are pads that supported the bottom of the craft itself on the catwalk. And then if you look at the first window left of center, you see there's a dot there. That's where they put the drill and try to get into the craft itself. So here's a more refined drawing by Michael Johnstone, who interviewed the U.S. Marine who was there back in 1963. His job was to guard the craft for 2 weeks. So here you see the dimension is 5 feet. So you could walk under this craft, you could walk around it. Let me go to a little bit more of a refined drawing that I came up with here. Now, he also said that on the exterior of the craft and on the exterior of these opaque windows, there was a little bit of a seam that you could feel, or a ridge that you could feel on your thumb. So that's my blown up, indented window lip drawing that shows you what this looked like. Now, he said directly below the craft on the hangar floor, they had a circle painted around the craft, and he was told to shoot to kill anyone who would challenge and breach that outer circumference of that circle. So he had orders to shoot to kill. So this is Joseph Rice full color rendering of the scaffolding. This is a much more refined illustration. Let me go to our very first pass color illustration by John McNeil. You can see the military personnel. So you had white lab coat technicians, you had guards there. There were some suitors there, like CIA personnel. And you can see that the white circle is painted on the hangar floor. And let's go to the next slide here. What I want to do now is I want to take your audience inside this facility. So we're just going to pretend that we're a fly, and we're going to go right through this chain link fence here. And this is an eye level from about 300 feet away. Let's get a little bit closer here. We're getting closer. Now we're inside the hangar. You can see the lab coat technicians. You can see the scaffolding. You've got the catwalk. You've got the opaque windows. You see the circle painted on the hangar floor. You see some of the beginning of the CIA types that were there. You've got the light shining down at a 45-degree angle. Here's a little bit more of a blow up. So now you see the CIA types. Let's blow this up a little bit further. This is a good view of the opaque windows. And I'll do a next slide. This is approximately 45-degree look down angle on the scene itself. Gives you a real good look at the circle that was painted on the floor. He made mention of that specifically, that there was a white painted circle on the floor below this craft itself. Now, he was there for 2 weeks. The last day that he was there, he saw them lifting the craft off of the scaffolding, putting it on a flatbed trailer that had a cradle device, and they were starting to put a tarp over the craft itself. So here's this cradle device that they made, and then we're going to start tarping the craft itself. This is about 50% tarped. We'll go to the next slide. This is approximately 100% tarp, and then they were moving it to the next location. So here you see the illustration that shows you what this looked like as it was fully tarped and moved to the next location. Now, here's Rudy's drawing that shows you this operation here. So again, the way they can keep this secret from the world is they compartmentalize this information, and they mobilize these assets, and they diversify their portfolio, moving it from base to base, so that not one person knows the whole story. That's what they've been able to do for like 70 years now. Now, after the diamond tip drill bits failed, and after the acetylene cutting torches failed, he said they brought in a tractor trailer with a large electrical generating device on it. And then they started bringing these heavy gauge cables. They connected those cables to a laser. They did have lasers back in 1963. And when they turned on the laser, it hit the side of the craft, bounced off, reflected, and hit a ceiling tile. And it damaged an upper ceiling tile. So that's what you see here in this illustration. Here is the damage that occurred. And then this is the original drawing of this laser incident, which I thought was very interesting. So they're dealing with a very interesting metallurgical science here. Now, within the notes that I got from Michael Johnstone, because I got about 5 pages of handwritten notes and sketches that go with this case, this witness said that these white lab coat technicians were wearing color-coded badges. So if you had a green badge, you had access to this part of the facility, but not this part. If you had a yellow badge, you could go to this part, but you couldn't go to this part. If you had a red badge, you had access to the whole facility. So these lab coat technicians were wearing these color-coded badges. Now, while all this is going on, and his job was to guard the craft for 2 weeks, he was basically told to frisk people who went into the hangar. But one time, no one frisked him, so he got in alone. And he had a very small Minox camera, and he took a photograph of this thing, believe it or not. And he said, someday I will tell this story, and by God, people are going to believe me. However, there was a flood at his house back in 1983, and he lost the photo. So we were this close of getting photographic evidence of this scene. Let's go to the next slide here. So I told my good friend Joseph Wraith, we have got to come up with a replica of what this craft may have looked like. So I told him it would be gray tones, it would be stained, it would be blurry, it would be out of focus. Something like this was recorded by our Marine Guard who guarded this craft back in 1963. Now, he also stated that there was a United States Secretary of the Navy who almost got shot walking over that white line. He was within a few inches of walking over that white line. It would have been this guy right here. So this gentleman would have been partially briefed on the program. That brings us to 4-star Major General Melvin F. McNichol. He was base commander at Tinker Air Force Base. So I did a little bit of digging here. This is his obituary. Ex-Tinker Commander Melvin McNichol dies. The Daily Oklahoman, July 11th, 1986. So this is a real guy. He was a real base commander. This is his obituary. We're talking about a real person here. He was friends with Charlotte Mann, who was involved in the 1941 Cape Girardeau crash retrieval. She actually saw the photograph. Anyway, these two were friends. They had a mutual interest in UFOs. So Charlotte Mann turns to the general and says, General, we've been friends for years. We have this coexistence interest in UFOs, and you've never told me anything. Are we still friends? So the colonel turns to Charlotte Mann and says, Charlotte, if you ever, and I mean ever, repeat what I'm about to tell you, it could ruin my career, and I'll deny everything. He proceeds to tell Charlotte Mann these 3 things. Number 1, he saw a UFO which was located in the West. Number 2, he walked around a UFO on a catwalk which was propped up by scaffolding. And number 3, bodies were recovered and one was still alive. When I heard this from Charlotte Mann back at IUFOC, been 7 years now, I said, I got it now. Now I got it. Now I know the Marine is telling us the truth, because the Marine said that he saw a UFO that was located potentially in the West. Because if you take a plane from Cherry Point, North Carolina, and you fly 3 hours, that puts you within the range of the West. The Marine said that there was a catwalk that propped up the craft itself, and there was scaffolding. This is exactly what the general said. And then the general said that bodies were recovered, one was still alive. Through water cooler talk that our Marine overheard from the lab coat technicians, they talked about bodies being recovered. So this is independent confirmation from an independent source that I don't think the Marine ever knew about, that these crash retrieval operations absolutely are 100% legit. So what I wanted to do, Paul, in this presentation is just give you a brief overview of some of these mission critical crash retrieval cases from the firsthand military witnesses that Leonard Stringfield had identified. And we just wanted to preserve an important part of our national history through the use of these illustrations.
And I think it's very, very well presented, and like you say throughout this presentation, is it brings things to life. I think the human mind needs that. As part of a story, we need the visual. I know I certainly do, and it helps you generate more questions. So I
So do
have
I.
a load of questions to ask you. So
Yep, go right
if you
ahead.
want to stop presenting anytime you wish,
Yep.
that's all good.
Okay.
But based on what you've said, I want to run through these things. First of all, I want to
Go
address the
ahead.
lying part.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to be some people that lie, but the
Sure.
vast majority of people are decent and they don't lie. So
Correct.
that will just disseminate or get rid of a lot of crap out there that people say everyone's a liar.
Right.
That's not true in any way, shape, or form. The bodies, obviously, if we've got 119 cases plus another 100 whatever from that other
Right.
book, and then there's at least one body per craft, often three or four, that's you're coming up nearly a half, 500 bodies. It's overwhelming evidence, isn't it?
I know. Yes, you're right. Now, some of
Outrageous.
these probably are unmanned, so we have to subtract those. However, if we go to Aztec, New Mexico, 1948, there were two bodies discovered by the oil field workers in the upper dome of the craft. And then when they went inside the outer rim, they found out an additional 14 bodies for
Whoa.
16 bodies recovered. This is Aztec 1948. So, let's just say 75 retrievals as a conservative number. And if we do only one of them, now you're talking 75 bodies.
Minimum, yeah. And
Yep.
likely to be towards the
Likely to be
500
more. Right.
based on that stuff. Are they dying because of the crashes or are they dying because of the air?
Probably both. Don't know
Yeah.
the answer for sure, but probably both
No,
because
yeah, like,
that
it's
one at Fort Polk, Louisiana, they had masks on, they had helmets on. And then the one in 42, they were alive, but then they later died. So they probably made it through the retrieval operation, but then they died from not being able to breathe our atmosphere.
it's a weird one either way, isn't it? And that
Yep.
particular case with the helmets and the mittens and
Yep.
the no knees thing, I wonder
That's
how much credence is put to the witness in that case because it makes you think how would they function as a being, not being
right.
able to move properly.
That's right.
And
Yep.
that also
I'm
brings me to the composite image you did with like the four fingers with no thumb. How do they do things?
Good question. Maybe they have a different muscle tone. Maybe they
Yeah,
can move things on
move
their
that in a
own.
different way. Yeah, I mean,
Possible. Uh, you know, they might have abilities that we're not aware of.
either way, again, strange. The foot gear company. Do we have
Yes.
evidence to say right? You reckon they were given this material in X year? Their company has changed radically since that
Yes. Right.
donation.
Right.
Have we got anything like that to say?
I took it as far as I could go. I
Gotcha.
extrapolated as far as I could go. So I wanted to dig down into the newspaper clippings going back to 23. They were doing things with gears so large back in 23. And then we hear from one of Stringfield's witnesses that the debris was sent to something they talk about Foot Brothers and Gear Company. So we can only go by Stringfield's witness.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. But you'd expect, had material been given, you'd expect a
Yes.
company to rise, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm
Like I
sure it
imagine a
was
lot of the other
bought
ones.
by another company by now, and it no longer is called that. But
Oh yeah,
if
true.
we could track who bought that company, then we could run that to ground and see if they have a laboratory where some debris might still be there. It's a long shot, but if we don't know, we won't try. We
It's a
don't.
thread to pull on, isn't it?
It's a
Is
thread to
all.
pull on, right?
You also said that as part of the Constitution, we own, in this case, America, would own everything. So the people, the taxpayers, own everything. But the word in my main mind came up, which is accept. Except
Right.
that, obviously, it's been disseminated out to private, not disseminated, delivered to private companies, and therefore, do you own everything then?
That you draw a very good conclusion there. That is the dirty deal that the United States government cut with the defense contractors because the United States government doesn't do anything. They farm everything out to the private industry, just like you said. So what the deal was is the government told the contractors that we don't care what you need to do. All we want to know is how these things work and how we can exploit the technology for weapons advancement. And we're going to give you free rein to figure out how these things work. And you can profit at billions of dollars with trickle down the technology, bring it out to the public sector. with off-the-shelf components, you can make billions. We just want to know those two things. And so what happened is in the late 1940s, going into the 50s and 60s, is that this information is no longer classified, it's proprietary. So FOIA requests will not get into it. Mhm.
And
That's
that's a
right.
hardship for you
Yes.
in your plan to get everything out. And speaking of that, bringing everything out, how do we bring evidence out? And I don't think from necessarily from Congress directly you're going to get it, because it's like, they can reach down so many layers, and then there's that
That's
bloody
right.
concrete wall with the good
That's
stuff
right.
underneath it. So is
Yep.
it the fact that we have to get those people that live down there out via whistleblower? Is that our only path?
That's the only path I can see because we're never going to do it with a frontal approach. It'll never work. We have to identify, track down, and basically recover these last remaining legacy UFO crash retrieval witnesses. I mean, Stanton Friedman always talked about chasing the Undertaker. We're
Yes.
way beyond that at this point. Most of Leonard Stringfield's witnesses, they're all dead now because we're talking 60, 70 years ago now. But there are still some remaining. There's no doubt about it. Whoever is still remaining, we need to track those people down and see if they're receptive to coming forward. That's the best we can do at this point.
And I agree with you on that, and I hope that that leads somewhere. My chain of thought in my brain says what needs to happen is that the old guard all age out, or as in the people that run the
Yes.
programs, right? And then more free thinking people will replace them, and then their next generation, more free thinking, and then you'll gradually move towards disclosure there. Not
Right.
necessarily, oh, by the way, I'm doing this, unless Trump does it, and I hope he does.
Yep. And the other thing is we can't have like a onesie and twosie come forward. We can't just have one military witness come forward. We need 12 to 24 first-hand military witnesses coming forward as one voice, as one united coalition. Then it's going to have an impact. Yep.
Super lush. Right, three more that I got up from the old thingy. First one I'm
Yep.
going to say is the physical files underground. Not underground. Physical files. Obviously, you said there's digital files at three locations.
Yes.
Obviously, to make those digital files, you need a shed load of physical files because everything was paperwork before digital.
Right.
Where do you think all that's stored?
That's a good question. I think they're probably stored at an underground facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Yep. The
Everything in one
originals
location, or are they again
are
split out?
difficult to say, but something tells me that the original files are still in a basement, very massive underground facility. Now, I don't know that for sure, but they must have the originals somewhere. I don't think they shredded them or burned them.
Exactly. You
I
you
think
wouldn't
they
do that,
kept
would
all
you?
that stuff. No, you wouldn't.
No, you don't.
Although I do know I can't say it was fact because I wasn't there, but back in 1967, my good friend Jack Pickett, deceased now, World War II combat veteran, he was at MacDill Air Force Base and he was brought by the base commander, Adjutant General. They went inside a classified library at MacDill Air Force Base, and this guy showed him absolutely huge racks and shelving of motion picture film reels of dish-shaped craft in flight with jet fighter escort. And then there were 8 by 10 black and white glossy photographs of UFOs stamped US Air Force on the back. So they had these photographs there back at MacDill back in 1967. So that is another location where they've kept those documents.
Yes, and they ain't going to get rid of that for digitization. Oh, the word, you know what I mean. If there's a solar flare, we lose all the digital stuff potentially anyway, so you
Exactly,
wouldn't get rid of
exactly.
that. Two questions which are theoretical, but I want to ask you the question. Do you think these main locations, these three big ones that you refer to, are linked via an underground network?
Probably, yes. There's some type of ARPANET originally
Something,
going
isn't
on.
there?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Yeah.
You would think that they'd want to share information. Yes, I do think so.
Some sort of
Yep.
like fast travel system as
Yes,
well to get stuff from A to B. And
absolutely.
here's a question for you. You won't be able to answer it, but I'm going to ask it. The egg thing seems
Yep.
very poignant for life, doesn't it?
It does.
And
It
especially
does.
with that center mass thing inside,
That's right.
does that suggest some measure of seed and life, technological seed?
That's a very good question. I really never looked at it that way, but it could very well be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean that he described it as a cracked egg with a yolk inside,
Yes.
and the crack went from the top to the bottom. Now we've recently heard about egg-shaped craft being recovered. We could go back to 64 with Lonnie Zamora. That
Lines
was
more,
an
yeah.
egg-shaped craft. And then near the same time frame, if you look at the newspaper clippings, 64, 63 time frame, there were multiple reports of egg-shaped UFOs flying in that area. So it wasn't just Lonnie Zamora. There was a multitude of those things.
Excellent. Now, I'm conscious of time. I have got two more pages of questions, but clearly we ain't
Yep.
going to get to that. So I want to just
That's,
quickly enter the Koit zone. Do you have 5 minutes?
yes, fine, no problem.
Excellent stuff. So we are now entering the Koit zone. Koit zone! So, Michael, these are just random questions. They're just like
Yep.
human things. So nothing to do with
Sure.
any of the stuff we've already gone through. So, cheese,
Good.
mature or mild?
Huh. Oh, wow. Very good question. I think both.
Whoa.
Can I pick one or the other?
You could do whatever you like, and I like the way you subverted that. And so you
Yeah.
went with both. That's
Okay.
fine. What TV show are you binging?
Mm. Let's see. You know what? Nothing now. I'm old school. Call to Glory. Don't know
Oh,
if
there
you
you
remember.
go.
Don't know if you're old enough to remember that.
Say it again.
Call to Glory.
I don't
It
know the
was
show
about
now.
it was about the Cold War and Kennedy being assassinated, and it had this period correct look about it. It had U-2 pilots, SR-71 pilots. I thought that was a cool show, but it's long gone now. This is
It
during
may
the
never
Reagan
have even
administration.
made it here to UK. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'll
maybe it
look it
did.
up. Call to Glory.
Yep. Call to
Cool, thank
Glory.
you.
Yes.
What is your favourite swear word, if you have one?
Mm.
You don't have to say it if you don't want to.
Maybe an F-bomb here and there, but I don't swear, so it's not a part of me.
Oh, do you
So
not? Fair play to you.
yeah.
When you do your food shopping, what
Yep.
item in the supermarket calls to you to buy it?
Okay. Fresh squeezed orange juice, but I'm not paying $8 for a tiny thing of it.
Good call.
Kale chips, and then chicken breast with rice.
All right, there you are. Nice
Mhm.
simple meal, by the sound of that one.
Yep.
Besides milk teeth, have you ever lost a tooth?
Have not.
Oh, well played
Well,
again.
yeah, I mean, I've lost teeth, but no, I don't. Not from any kind of accident or anything. No,
Oh, cool.
not that.
What is the most amount of money you've ever found?
Most amount of money.
Yeah.
I think I found $400 once
Whoa.
in a book. Yeah,
Really? What, like you bought
yeah,
from a jumble sale or something?
in a book. Yeah.
Jeez, that's amazing. Fair play.
Yep.
I think the most Tiff, my girlfriend, she's found 40 quid once, so that's the equivalent of like
Yeah.
$50. So
Yeah.
400 is amazing. If you're
They're
ever
all hundred
bored at
dollar
home,
bills too. hundred
oh, is
dollar
it? Oh,
bills.
wow, wow, nice.
Yes.
I bet that was a great day for you. What did you do with that money? I'm interested.
Invested in my research like I always do.
Ah, there you go.
The,
Nice, fair
the
play.
difference here is ultimately I don't care one bit if I don't get financial compensation, even one dime. I'm so committed to this. I'm fully prepared to go down with the ship because to me, this is a crusade. This is not a hobby. This is not this is a full crusade. So I will go down with the ship if need be.
I agree with you, by the way. Money means nothing. It's a tool
Right.
to help you get to a goal, but it does
Yes,
mean nothing.
that's right.
And I
That's
like the way you're fighting against that because money is what kept the secret in the first place, is what sounds of it.
that's right.
And you're doing it
Yeah.
the other way. So that's
We
ace.
get along so good, Paul. I like you, man. You're
Yeah,
a
it was
good
the
guy.
right way of thinking, isn't it? If you're ever bored at home and scrolling TV channels looking for something to watch, which film or series of film would make you stop and watch it?
I just read my aerospace books. That's it. No TV here. Yep.
You're
I
like
just read
Grant
my
Cameron, he
aerospace.
does that as well, yeah.
Yep. Same thing.
Cool, cool. What's the worst accident you've had?
Worst accident I've had. Well, lost some files off a hard drive. I consider that an accident.
Yes.
I had some tires that weren't the best, and then when I drove down a road, it rained the morning before, which the oil seeped up off the pavement onto the oil level. And when my tires hit that, I did a 180 and was going backwards down the road and
Oh,
slammed into a
Christ.
tree. So
And
that
I have
was
a question for you on that. Did
yeah,
time slow down for you at that point?
kind of, yes. Kind
Yeah.
of, yes.
I've had a
Yes.
similar crash, and it did for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
While I was
Weird.
spinning around, I was going sort of like, "Whoa, I'm spinning
Yeah.
slowly." It's
That's
like
right.
that. Yeah,
I
weird.
was along for the ride at that point. There's nothing I could do.
Exactly. Summer or winter?
100% summer.
Excellent.
100%.
That's the correct choice. And the final question in the Koit zone before we wrap up: God offers you a chance to return as you. You can relive your life again with your current level of brain. Are you doing it? And if so, are you doing anything differently?
Yeah, I would. I would. I would be more bold and outspoken and wouldn't be so shy. But it's hard for me, but that's what I would do. I would approach it from a different aspect. Mhm. I'd have more confidence.
Yes, that's the word, isn't it? Confidence. But at
Yeah,
least you'd follow the same path, and that's ultimately what I'm
I
asking.
follow the same, but and even if I ever did make it to the big time, which I won't, and it's okay because there's got to be volunteers. There's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. Even if I did make it to that level, I'd still be the same person.
Yes,
I would
correct.
still be the same person. I'd still be the same humble person I am right now. I'd still be the same person.
And your answers have told me that, so that backs up exactly what you said. So thank you ever so much. That brings us to the end of the Koit zone, which I have one final question for you, which is: what are you currently working on? Is there a different project or another project you're doing at the moment?
I am working on illustrating the APRO files that have been buried and forgotten for 40 years. I'm making those cases come alive. And I'm still doing my crash retrieval, PowerPoint presentations. I'm still doing my magical mystery tour UFO PowerPoint presentations. But, this has to go somewhere. This has to
Yes.
lead somewhere. We have to actually get some traction on this. Just doing lectures here and there is great, but something has to come out of it. We need to get these remaining witnesses up into Congress. That's the goal, and get this information out in real time, public congressional hearings with the bodies and the hardware. That is the ultimate goal.
I have a subsequent question, so I'm sorry for the last one, but
Yeah.
spiritually, what does your mind or your heart or whatever you want to call it tell you about the path that you're on? Are you going to achieve something via your
I
work, do you
don't
think?
know if I'm going to achieve it, but it's just telling me that this is what I'm here to do. This is
Good.
what I've been designed to do, one way or the other. Aerospace is my life, and something, the universal force is telling me to go down this road. This is where the secrets are. This is where we can all finally detach the chains and the shackles that have been keeping us down. The answer is right through these crash retrievals because it's at the heart of the matter.
I agree with you, and that's a great sentiment to end on. So thank you ever so much for your time today, Michael. I really do appreciate it. Anyone
Yep.
listening or watching, please check out the links in the description. I'll have a link to the book that Michael mentioned, plus his sites, etc. Go and get involved. If you can do anything, if you have anything for Michael, please pass it along to him. Thank you ever
Great.
so much, Michael.
Thanks a lot. Yep.
Keep well. Bye bye, everyone. See you on the next one. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.